Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the Culture Shock Podcast. I'm yours truly, Culture Shock. Appreciate you guys for tuning in. We are here to discuss another matchup going into week 6. This is the Arizona Cardinals heading down to Indiana in Lucas Oil Stadium to face the Indianapolis Colts, who are running through the NFL right now. They are on a tear. The Cardinals are trying to recover from the loss last week. They're on a potential brink of continuing the losing streak, but they're trying to snap it going into Lucas Oil Stadium. But it's not going to be easy, man. This Colts team has been on fire on both sides of the football. Daniel Jones is playing out of his mind. The defense is finding a groove. They just made a move for Jermaine Pratt for the weak side linebacker position. Still making moves. They did wind up losing the kicker and last week with Spencer Schrader, but they wound up signing Michael Bagley back to the Indianapolis Colts, who used to play for them a few years ago. So it's going to be interesting to see how he plays going into this week. But more so or less to talk about the Arizona Cardinals. The Arizona Cardinals, it hasn't been a great year so far. I mean, it's been rocky. I would say 50-50. But, with the loss of Kyler Murray not playing this week, the Colts get a chance to play their former quarterback, Jacoby Brissett. And it's raising a lot of heads, turning a lot of heads going into this game, especially from the Colts fan sides, because, a lot of people don't know if it's going to be a revenge game for Jacoby Brissett or things of that nature. I know Jacoby's a competitor. He's always been, a fan favorite in Indianapolis for a few people. So it's going to be interesting to see how he comes out this week and plays against his team. Marvin Harrison Jr. found his groove, so that's going to be an interesting matchup to watch going into this week. Especially with our secondary. I know they're probably going to have Mooney Ward out there guarding him. So that's going to be a very good matchup to watch between Ward and Marvin Harrison Jr. Ward's been having himself a standout year this year guarding top receivers. So it's going to be interesting to see if he can pretty much do the same going up against a guy that just found his groove. But like I said, with Jacoby Brissett being the quarterback position, this defensive line just feasted last week. It's going to be interesting to see how this defense at Lou Anarumo draws up a scheme to pretty much get Jacoby off edge. Jacoby is really good at the play action. If anybody remembers from Indianapolis, play action guru used to be his name when I used to call him when he was back there in the pocket. He loves a good play action play, a nice rollout, and things of that nature. So it's going to be interesting to see how he compare up with his targets. It's his first game, starting after the Kyler Murray injury scenario. So it looks like he's going to be starting likely this week. And, but like I said, with the chemistry so far in Arizona, it just hasn't been there between the coaching staff and the players. So the locker room's just a lot of dysfunction, honestly, in my opinion. But besides that, this team still plays competitive football regardless of the situation. Even though they turn the football over or maybe fumble the footballs and things like that, this team is still competitive. They still have a really nice defense. The defense is one of the reasons why they stay in these games. A lot of their games came down to the end of the scenario towards the end of the game. But their defense has been playing pretty good so far, so I will give credit where credit is due. It's going to be interesting to see how this offense plays against this Colts defense. This Colts defense draws up a lot of good schemes, especially good teams like that, especially against teams like the Arizona Cardinals. A few years ago, if you would ask me about this matchup and just due to the records and things of that nature, I probably would pick the Cardinals. But this team is totally different from what we're used to seeing from the Indianapolis Colts. So that's a good thing. There was this thing in the history when they were played out to competition and, just outperform the better teams. But this year they're playing with tempo, playing their pace of football, and just running away with it when they got the chance. And you've seen that last week against the Raiders. They were favored to win that game, and they wind up just beating them out the water. The score was like 40-6. So we're looking to see what they're going to do this week against the Arizona Cardinals and Jacoby Brissett if he's at the quarterback position. It's going to be interesting to see if they can break this losing streak and they can just, surprise Indianapolis and wind up, defeating them at home. The Colts are undefeated at home right now at the moment. This team's been on fire since the beginning of the season. Daniel Jones going up against this defense is going to be interesting to see how he schemes up and pretty much plays against this team. He's been playing in stride. This is probably his best year in his career, in my opinion. Being on a team like this that's pretty much almost complete and polished. You've seen a good form of Daniel Jones, and it's not about the team you play on. It's about how you perform. So, like I said, when you match a player up with good talent, it just brings the best out of you. He's locked in. He's communicating with all his teammates, hanging out with the guys, pretty much won the locker room, in my opinion. So it's going to be interesting to see how he plays against this defense. But not making mistakes is definitely one of the go-to bullet points, in my opinion, going into this matchup. You got to limit turnovers. Like I said, regardless of the situation about this Cardinals team, they can still force the ball, force a few turnovers. So, it won't be surprising if anything happens like that. But like I said, the Cardinals' defense is probably the best part of their team. So it's going to be interesting to see how Daniel Jones, matches up against his defense, if he can dot them up, or he could find some type of balance between him and Jonathan Taylor. Jonathan Taylor has been having himself an amazing year. So it's going to be interesting to see how he matches up against this team. Can he have another big game like he did last week against the Raiders? But I'm excited to see how he pans up against this team, especially being back at home. That crowd's going to be rocking. Home field advantage is definitely something the Colts have right now. That's just a no-brainer. I would love to see that crowd be rocking and the Colts just battle that energy and go out there and just have themselves of an amazing game. One of those things is going to be not settling for three. Definitely taking your points when you can. It's definitely something you should do for sure. But just staying on the gas, not letting off the gas. Don't play conservative football. Of course, play your tempo and play your pace, but take what they give you. Daniel Jones is really good at finding his targets. In the immediate middle of the field or hitting the sidelines. Man, his throwing the football, his ability to do that this year has definitely been something a lot of people don't really talk about or give him credit for. Really good at managing the game, man. He's really good at doing that. So it's going to be interesting to see how they do that. But the Cardinals, the season's still early for them. Besides the situation of what they got going on with injuries and things like that, it's still early. They can still turn it around at any given moment. They just got to lock in and play good football. But they are in a tough division, so it is what it is about that situation. But it's definitely something to monitor about the Kyler Murray situation and what they may do moving forward. There's a lot of quarterbacks out there that could potentially be on the move. Jameis Winston is one of those guys. Who knows where he may end up? He may end up somewhere, or what they may do with Anthony Richardson. Nobody knows for the Colts. But like I said, when you look at the matchup, the Colts pretty much have them favored in everything. Offense consistency, the Colts win in that, the things in that nature. One of the main goals would probably be keeping Arizona's defense off the field. If they can keep them off rhythm, the Arizona Cardinals defense, if they can keep them off rhythm, I think it'll be a pretty smooth game from the Colts offense. But the run protection has to be something to look for going into this week. Pass blocking has been superb, in my opinion, from the offensive line for the Indianapolis Colts, but the run blocking has been iffy. But they've been getting better week by week. I will give them credit for that. So it's going to be interesting to see how the run blocking looks up against the Arizona Cardinals. If they can find those lanes for Jonathan Taylor like they did in the second half of that Raiders game last week, it's going to be a huge game for Jonathan Taylor. And the play action bootleg is something Daniel Jones has been perfecting so far. Again, this year, they've been doing, especially the Titans game. The Titans game would be one of those staples where I mentioned the bootleg being, bread and butter for Daniel Jones. And with Tyler Warren, he can have himself a big game this week against the Cardinals. Those would be my go-to. My go-to guy this week will be Tyler Warren and Michael Pittman Jr. Despite the injury report of what we may see, who may be available to play, Alec Pierce might be able to come back this week, so that'll be huge for the Colts and their offense in general. It might limit, Josh Downs after his successful week last week, or it might boost it. A.D. Mitchell looked like he might get his rest back this week, so it's interesting to see how he may come out. He could have himself a big game after, the whole situation of dropping the ball before touching the end zone. He could be on pace for having himself a good game against this Cardinals team, so that'll be something to look for. But the Colts definitely are huge favors in this. So the Colts might have themselves a freebie when it comes to the offensive line for the Arizona Cardinals. Their pass protection has not been there. That's one of the reasons why Kyler Murray, just was getting banged up all year so far. The pass protection has just not been one of their strong suits. So this could be another big week for the Colts defensive line. And that's something you love to see because consistency is key, regardless of the situation or who you play. Shout out to Latu last week with the pick. He might get himself another one this week. But consistency is key. You build that consistency. You can go out there and do that against better teams. So it's going to be interesting. The Rams game was one of those games where the consistency would have been something. If we would have played the Rams this week before we did a few weeks ago, you probably would have got a better performance from that defensive line. So it's going to be interesting to see how that looks for them. And like I said, the momentum is definitely on the Colts side. If they can manage the game and play their pace of football, it's nothing but a W for them. But like I said, um, the biggest things I could take away is A.D. Mitchell, if he can go out there and play himself a good football game. I'm looking for Tyler Warren to explode this week. The defensive line for the Colts is my other strong point for the defensive side. So the defensive line, A.D. Mitchell and Michael Pippen Jr. and Tyler Warren will be my go-to strong points for the Colts. I do have the Colts winning this game. It's going to be interesting to see how the Cardinals come out, especially with not having any film on Jacoby Brissett this year. Definitely could sneak up and surprise the Colts, but with the way they've been playing and Lou Anarumo's scheme, I think they'll dial up something pretty good, and hopefully their momentum can keep up and they can continue their win streak at Lucas Oil Stadium. But you let me know your thoughts in the comment section about this game, and we'll talk more about it after the game. But you let me know your thoughts in the comment section. Follow me on all platforms. This is Culture Shock. I appreciate you guys for tuning in. And until next time, go Colts and have a good one.